My name's Jonathan. If we hadn't had a chance to meet yet, I'm the lead pastor here and super glad to see all of you here today on a really great day. Today I have a pretty big agenda for our time together today. And my agenda is that I want us to regularly and intentionally give a significant portion of our money away. That's the kind of community that I hope we are becoming, is that we are the kind of a group that is regularly and intentionally giving a significant portion of our money away. Or another way that you could say it is that we want to live an open-handed life in what is often a closed-fist culture. And the reason why we're talking about this today is that we are going through the gospel according to Luke. And so 2,000 years ago, there's a guy named Luke who wanted to write good news that he said was good news that would bring salvation to the entire world. And when he sat down to write the good news, he wrote down the entire story of Jesus, from his birth to all of his teachings, to all the things that he did, to his death, to his resurrection, to his work still today through the Holy Spirit. And all of it is the good news. And Luke has a reoccurring theme, a couple reoccurring themes, but one big reoccurring theme that keeps coming up in this good news. And it starts from Jesus' very first teaching. And so Luke records that the first time that Jesus spoke publicly, the first words out of Jesus' mouth were, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor." And so for Luke, a big part of this whole thing of the good news was that it was going to be particularly good news for the poor. And then regularly, all throughout the rest of the gospel, you see Luke elevating the marginalized. You see Luke putting this push that we are to live generous lifestyles. There's a story about a good Samaritan that Jesus says that we are all supposed to be like. And then where we've been over the last couple weeks is we've been in Luke 11 through 12, which is this long discourse that Jesus is doing with a growing crowd of people. And so he starts by teaching this group of people how to pray. And the way he teaches them how to pray is he says, "Father, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come." That when we pray, we start off with this posture of, "God, you're amazing. And would you make your amazingness come down here? Make the way things are in your kingdom, may that kingdom be right here." And Jesus continues to teach this group of people. A few weeks ago, we looked at this teaching that Jesus did. Again, this is all kind of one big discourse that Jesus is doing, where he talks about there's two different ways to see the world. There's a way to see the world through an abundance mindset, and there's a way to see the world through a scarcity mindset, what he calls a good eye and what he calls a bad eye. And that we can look at lots of things in our world this way, but especially he talks about money. And when we look at our money, when we look at our resources, do we see that there is plenty? I have more than I need, so therefore, of course I can be generous. Of course I can share. Or do we believe that it's limited, that it's scarce, and so therefore I need to hold on to mine. I need to make sure I get mine before anybody else, and that I need to live selfish with it. And then there's kind of this big growing group of people. There's his disciples, and then there's some religious leaders. And at different times, he's particularly talking to different groups that are there. And at one point during this kind of long teaching that Jesus is doing, he's talking particularly to the religious leaders, and he's kind of really laying it out to the religious leaders in a way that maybe some of you have wanted to lay it out to some religious leaders before, to say, okay, you religious people, you look great on the outside. When you guys come in on Sunday morning to service, when you're doing your church, you look like your life is all together. but I can see on the inside. And on the inside, you're actually a mess. You are absolutely corrupt. And then Jesus gives them this very tangible teaching. Say, if you want to not just look good on the outside, if you want to actually be transformed on the inside, then here's what you need to do, is you need to be generous to the poor. And Jesus continually just keeps coming back to this idea that what it looks like in his kingdom, what it looks like to follow him, has this big thing of us being generous people, especially to the poor. So all of that is going on. Jesus is teaching this kind of growing group. And then we pick up our story today in Luke chapter 12. And here's how it begins. It says, someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And I love this. This feels so real to me because this is part of my job, is I get to stand up on most weeks and present to all of you, to a group of people. And for the most part, you guys always look like you're all looking at me. You look like you're paying attention. You look like you're listening, and I'm sure you all are. But I also know, because I've sat in your seats before while other people have been up here, and I know that it's very easy to be sitting there and looking like you're paying attention, and at some level you are paying attention. But you also have, you're thinking about what happened yesterday, and you're thinking about what's going to happen later on today, and you're thinking about your shopping list, and you're counting how many light bulbs there are, and you have this other kind of narrative going on. And that's what I picture, is that there's this big crowd of people, and everyone's listening, but there's at least this guy who the whole time Jesus is talking, he's like, yeah. He has this other burning question in his head. He came there with an agenda of something that he wanted Jesus to answer for him. And he keeps waiting for Jesus to take a breath so he can find or open up a Q&A time so he can ask his question. And Jesus never gives the moment. And so then finally this guy's I just got to blurt it out because this is what is on my mind. And what's on his mind is, "Teacher, would you tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me?" And we don't know much about what's going on. This is really kind of all we know. We don't know how much the inheritance was. We don't know if this was the younger brother or the older brother. We don't know if there was other brothers. We don't know if there was sisters. What we know is that there's a guy here who at some level is worried that as some inheritance is being divided up, he is not getting his fair share. He is very much exhibiting what a scarcity mindset looks like. There's this new inheritance, and I feel like I'm not getting, there's only so much to go around, and I'm not getting my fair share. And Jesus, you need to do something about this. And some of you maybe can relate. Maybe some of you have gone through something in your personal family, or maybe you know someone and they've gone through something in their family, and it's very sad, isn't it? Where all of a sudden when inheritance comes into play, family can all of a sudden get a little persnickety, and there can be some fighting, and there can be some loss of relationship because someone feels like they're not getting their fair share. And that's what's going on here. Here's how Jesus responds. He says, Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbitrator between you?" We're going to talk about this more in a little bit, but I think that this is huge. This guy has this whole thing he wants to bring up to Jesus, and he has a certain role that he wants Jesus to play. And many of us, as we're coming to this whole idea of Jesus, many of us have our own expectations, our own hopes of what Jesus ends up doing and who Jesus ends up doing. And what many of us want is we want Jesus to give us answers. We want Jesus to tell us what to do. I have this situation, I have my brother, I feel like I'm not getting my fair share. Jesus, would you come in and just set this situation straight? And for many of us, that's the kind of Jesus that we want, is we want Jesus going to come in and to multiple different issues that we are going through. As we're trying to figure out, should I do this or should I do that? As we're trying to figure out, okay, what is right and what is wrong? We want Jesus to come in and just give us an answer. Just tell me what I'm supposed to do. and for some, this can be kind of frustrating sometimes, is Jesus very rarely does that. Jesus will often answer questions by like telling a story or like opening up some sort of a principle. And instead of telling you exactly what you're supposed to do, Jesus will kind of point you into a direction of how you are supposed to be. And that can be frustrating because we want Jesus to tell us what to do. And we're going to come back to that at the end of the teaching today, because there's going to be a moment as we go through all this where I think, especially as we talk about generosity and money, what we want is we want Jesus, like, just give me the answer. Just tell me what's the box I need to check where now that I'm good. And Jesus isn't going to tell us that today. He's going to put us in a place of more tension, more struggle, more wrestling, and I think it's a better place to be. This is the principle that Jesus is going to lay out then. So then he said to them, then he's talking to the whole crowd, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, because life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. And I love that word life. That's the Greek word zoe. And what it means is it doesn't just mean like life, like you have breath in your body. This is the Greek way of saying like, This is the life. This is the way it's supposed to be. It's like ultimate contentment. It's like ultimate happiness. And it's very easy in our world to think that, you know when I'll really have the life? You know who's really happy? You know when I would be really content is if I just had a few more microphones, a few more possessions? That's weird. I'll switch to this one. If I just had a few more possessions, which is something that we see all the time in our culture. So there's a great board game called the Game of Life. My family actually played it last night, not related, just kind of what my kids wanted to play. And so if you don't know, here is the rules for the Game of Life. It says in this game, players can make their own exciting choices as they move through the twists and turns of life. You get to move your card token around the game board from start to retirement and experience unexpected surprises related to family, career, and other milestones of life. And then the player with the most money at the end of the game wins. And I think if we're honest, all of us at some level know that's not true. And all of us at some level believe that lie. And there's a part of us that believes that if we just had more money, if we had a nicer house, if we had nicer cars, then we would be happier. Then we would have the life. And Jesus comes at us with this incredibly hard teaching that life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. And then Jesus is going to tell a maybe made up story, maybe a real story. It says, then he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. So from the get-go, everyone in the audience, this would have been like very like, this is very interesting. Because this is now a large crowd, Luke says. This was a couple of thousand people. And what history tells us is that most people in Israel at this point in history were poor, very poor. There was huge taxation from the Roman Empire, taxation from kind of the temple system in Israel. And a lot of scholars say that people were being taxed 50 to 75% of their income. Many people were having land that they had inherited from their family that they were needing to now sell just so they could get enough food to survive. Many people were actually selling themselves or other people in their family into slavery just so so they could have enough money to survive. Jesus is speaking to a group of people where most people there, maybe all the people, would have been very poor. And if anybody there was rich, they would have stood out. And I could see like either everyone's looking around like, man, none of us here are rich, or maybe there's one, two rich people in the audience, and everyone in the audience is kind of like looking at like, hey, you're a unicorn in this culture. A rich person, and this rich person, they have a farm, and it has just yielded an abundant harvest, and they have a problem that nobody in the audience would have had any empathy for. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. To which everyone in the audience would be like, oh, you poor thing. What are you ever going to do? And everyone in the audience would have had a solution for this. I know what you can do, Mr. Rich Guy who now has all kinds of extra crops and you're not sure what to do with all this extra food. We have a pretty good idea of what you could do with all of this extra food. But this guy has another idea. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain, and I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take easy, eat, drink, and be merry. You can now be happy. You can now have the life because you have so much stuff. And friends, this is the point of the story where we all find ourselves. In Jesus' parables, there's always God and there's always us. And in our culture here today, I don't think we have to look very far to find ourselves in this story. There was a survey done that said over half of U.S. homeowners report that household clutter causes daily stress, contributing to anxiety and feeling of being overwhelmed. Is there anybody that can relate? That they just look at their house, they look at their shed, they look at their garage, like, I just have too much stuff. Or at the very least, I would guess that everyone in this room today got to wake up and at some level got to choose what clothes they were gonna wear from a stack of different clothes. They might have got to choose what shoes they were gonna wear. Some of us, we chose which car we were going to drive, and we went out of our house that we live in, out to our house that just our car lives in, and we look at just all of this stuff. We are a group of people who have lots, surplus amounts of stuff. And we are a group of people who are rich. Another survey said that 63% of people just say they have too much stuff. The World Bank says that if you make around $25,000 a year, you are in the top 10% of income earners in the world. And I think you could say that if you happen to find yourself in the top 10% of a category, then you are in the top. You are rich. There's a great website that you can go to. Don't do this now, but you can do this at home later. It's just called How Rich Am I? And you can actually find out your exact percentage, because I bet some of you make more than $25,000 a year. And so you can put in where you live, you can put in how many adults in your house, how many kids in your house, and you can put in your household income, and then it'll show you kind of where you happen to be. And so this is where you would be if you make $25,000 a year. And some of you who make more than $25,000 a year, you're way in some different categories. We are a group of people who are rich. We are a group of people who have lots of stuff. And beyond that, the World Inequity Report just this year said that the top 10% own 3/4 or 75 to 76% of the global wealth. And so I always find it helpful to demonstrate this. And so I want to do a little display for you real quick. And so I'm going to need 10 volunteers. And so 10 people who are willing. I'm not going to make you say anything. I'm not going to embarrass you, I promise. But I need 10 people just to walk up here. So first 10 people, come on up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All my leaders are so good. 9 and 10. Perfect. All right, so we're going to make Jared the guinea pig here. All right, so based off this stat then, here is the world in which we live in. So 90% of the world lives on 25% of the world's stuff. So you guys get half a bagel. And Jared, some lunch in a cup. Shells and cheese, some flour, some sauce, some jelly, beans, diced tomatoes, and half a bagel. Where did I put my clicker? Oh, thank you. Jared's got that. It wouldn't surprise me. So in the world that we live in, 10% is being held, 3/4 of the food is being held by 10% of the world, while 75% of the world is getting by with just this amount. And what makes it even more stark is it's not just that some people have a lot while other people have a little. It's that some people literally don't have enough to survive. And so in this group of people, more than 3 million children die annually from hunger and hunger-related causes, averaging that a child every 10 to 15 seconds dies. And hunger is linked to roughly 45 to 50% of all deaths of children under 5. And even beyond that, what all of us know is that if you happen to be in the top 10%, but you're actually living on somewhere near $25,000 a year, that is still not enough. And so 47.4 million Americans, or 14% of the population, were food insecure during this past year. And in our state, 2.7 million residents, or 13.5% of the population, and almost 1 million kids were currently food insecure. And this is the world in which we live in, which for all of us following Jesus should raise a huge question. That if we happen to be in the rich camp, and if we happen to have more than we need, then what should we do with that? Should we just build a bigger house or buy a bigger house? Should we build a bigger shed, a bigger garage? Should we rent a storage unit to put in all of our stuff? If we happen to be someone with a lot, when there's others who literally don't have enough to survive, what do we do with that? All right, you guys can have a seat. Thank you, guys. Are you keeping the bagel? I think I just touched it, so you can have it. We're good enough friends for that. It's true. So if that is the situation that we all live in, then what does it look like for us to live an open-handed life in what is often a closed-fist culture? What does it look like for us to regularly and intentionally give a significant portion of our money away? And I want to give two answers to this, one that is a little bit clear and one that is intentionally very unclear that I think is more important. What do we do in this world? And so the first is I just want to relay out our plan for generosity. If you've been around Christ Church, on the front of your program, we have a regular way that we encourage people to handle their money as Jesus followers. And here's what we say. It's kind of a three-step plan. Is number one, we encourage you all to live below your means, which already in our culture is a huge deal because it's so easy to take the amount of money that we currently make and spend more. And when you spend more money than what you have, then you go in debt. And so many of us are currently living beyond our means, and the financial strain we feel is not only do we have too much stuff and that we are living rich, but that we are living beyond our means. And so one of the first steps is to put ourselves on a budget where we intentionally are spending less than we are making. Then the second step is we encourage you to predetermine how much you will give. And so we encourage everyone to set a budget. And the way we encourage you to set your budget is to first determine, here's how much money I want to give away. And then I'm going to find a way to live on the rest, which is very different than how many times we give, which is we have all of our bills and cars and shopping and gas is going up and all the different things. And so we kind of spend all the money that we spend. And then if we have any extra, then we give it away. And because we often don't feel like we have a lot of extra, we end up not giving anything away. But what we want to do is we want to predetermine an amount, preferably a percentage, that we are going to give away and then figure out a way to live on the rest. And then we encourage you to give to at least 3 different places. And so figure out a percentage that you're going to give away, and then especially give some of that away to the marginalized. We've asked a handful of different groups to join us over the next couple weeks. And so I think our first one is coming on May 31st. And then for like multiple weeks in a row, we're going to have presentations from different groups that are doing amazing things to be able to help the marginalized. And if you find yourself where you would like to give some money away, but you're not sure who to give that money away to, an organization that's really making a difference, we're going to introduce you to some. Because we want you to take some of your money, and kids who don't have enough food, people who don't have adequate housing, people who are reading to literacy levels, we want to be intentionally helping them with something that makes your heart beat fast. Then we want to give directly to hospitality. We want to be people that are inviting people over for dinner. We want to be people that are bringing bagels in for the office. We want to be people that are inviting people out for coffee. And that's part of how we live, is in fun and hospitality. And then we do ask you to give some money to Christ Church Albany. We are an independent church. We are supported. My salary, the utilities on this building, improvements that we want to do to this building are all paid for. And so we ask you to give money to that. So that's the first one, is we want all of us to be generous. I think that there's no matter, some of us feel like we make a little bit and we are barely hanging on, and I get that. Some of us feel like, yes, I have a surplus amount of money. But for all of us, this is an all play with Jesus. We want to live below our means, whatever that looks like. We want to determine how much we will give, and then we want to give to those 3 areas. So that's the first one. That's hopefully a little bit clear. Here's the second one, though, that I think is a lot harder, and that is the question of, okay, so how much? How much do I really need to give away? What's the percentage? Is it a couple $100, a couple $1,000, tens of thousands? Is it 5%? Is it 10%? Is it 20%? How much of my money should I give away? knowing what I know of just how lucky and rich I am, how much money should I be setting aside for me still? What is okay? I mean, am I allowed to replace my car? Am I allowed to do some house renovations? Am I allowed to do the vacation? Like, how much am I allowed to enjoy just for myself? How much am I allowed to put away and store up for a future that I don't even know if I'm going to be alive for or not? How much am I allowed to store up in my 401k? How much am I allowed to put in a savings account? And how much do I need to keep so I can give away? What is the amount? I don't know. And I don't think Jesus would tell you. I think what Jesus would tell you, he would say, who appointed me to be the judge my job isn't to make all of these things super clear and obvious to you. I want you to instead live off of a principle, and I want you to wrestle with this. I think you should struggle with this of what does it mean to live in a crazy culture like ours where we have so much. Because I do think there's a part of enjoyment of the things that we have. I do think there's some benefit to saving for your future. And I think it's really tough as a Jesus follower just to be like, well, of course Jesus wants me to do this. I think it's a tough tension that we need to live in. I think the principle is that we need to be on our guard against all kinds of greed, because it's very easy to disguise being frugal, being whatever. It's easy to disguise that when at the heart of it, it's really greed. It's really a scarcity mindset in a generous world. And to somehow believe that even though Jesus says that we should give and that is, following him is the way to life, it's easy to believe that the way of life is actually in possessions. And so for today, I just want us to live in that. I just want us to wrestle in that. And I want to encourage all of you to take up some prayers this week of looking at your life, looking at the stuff in your house, looking at the amount of money that you have, and just asking the question, what is it that you want me to do with this? How generous do you want me to be? And I just trust that God is going to continue to lead you and lead us and lead me in the way of this tension of being generous and living the whole thing out. But to kind of drive into that, I want to end by praying together. So if you guys would join me, Eleanor, you can come on up. And we're going to pray our prayer that is at the center of all of this. This is easy if you're in charge, but we want to make Jesus in charge of our lives. And so would you join me in praying our hand prayer together as we all wrestle with this together. So would you hold your hands up and surrender? And again, we're changing the pronouns because this isn't about you, this is about us. So would you pray this with me? We choose to hold our hands as a symbol of surrender. Our life is not about us. We surrender to your lordship. We surrender our preferences, prejudices, and position to you. Our fears, finances, friends, and family to you. Let's hold our hands out open, guys. We choose to hold our hands as a symbol of generosity. What we have is not ours. We are only a steward of all that you have given us. We want to mirror the way that you open your hand to us and lavish your love and life upon us. We want to live an open-handed life in a closed-fist culture. Let's put our hands out. We choose to hold our hands forward as a symbol of mission. We want to live for something greater than us. We want to embrace your kingdom mission. We want to embrace and welcome your mission to the lost, last, least, and lonely, the poor, powerless, privileged, and persecuted. Amen. Let's sing this prayer together.